Throughout the 18th century, a vast wave of Jewish immigrants came to America in search of a life free from religious persecution. The occurrence of pogroms was intensifying in Europe, particularly in the eastern part of the continent. These attacks, launched with the purpose of expelling Jews, were hateful and deadly. As most of the boats coming from Europe landed in New York, many Jewish immigrants settled here, particularly in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. There, they often lived in tenement buildings. Densely packed on narrow streets, tenement buildings were cheap housing, which consisted of multiple units, each of which would house an entire family: mother, father, children, grandparents, and grandchildren. It was of particular interest to Jewish immigrants to live in the same areas as other Jews did, especially after sailing across the world to start a completely new life, oftentimes arriving with no money or contacts in America. While it was easy to feel alone, living amongst other Jews was a way to create community. In the Lower East Side, people would do their shopping in large, busy street markets that would often be right outside their doorstep. It was typically women who would do the shopping for their household, and therefore were the de facto accountants and bookkeepers for their families. At the turn of the century, a small group of wealthy businessmen had a monopoly over the meat industry. In May of 1902, the price of kosher meat was raised from 12 cents per pound to 18 cents per pound, a 50% increase. As an initial reaction, over 400 Lower East Side butchers held a boycott against the meat trusts. However, they forfeited after only 5 days due to pressure to pay their rents. Fed up with inaction, the Jewish women of the Lower East Side, led by Fanny Levy and Sarah Edelson, gathered in the streets with almost 20,000 protesters, mostly other women. This is their strike? Look at the good it has brought. Now, if we women make a strike, then it will be a strike. The women threw bricks through butcher shop windows, poured gasoline over any remaining meat and set it on fire, and threw meat at the cops patrolling the event. On May 16, 1902, the New York World Evening published a front-page story celebrating the police officers in their attempts to quell the movement and demonizing the Jewish women protesters. In spite of this, over the next week, the women fought relentlessly. They plastered the streets with flyers, fundraised to help bail their fellow protesters out of jail, and even went door to door, checking families' pots and pans for any evidence of forbidden meat. They even voiced their opinions at synagogue. Sarah Edelson, one of the leaders, spoke in front of her community. Dear sisters, as we hold fast in our bitter struggle against the beef trust, we request that you, in the name of humanity, help us in our battle so that we can win. The butchers have raised the prices of meat so high that it is no longer possible for us to eat meat. After gaining the support of the Retail Butchers Association and many local religious leaders, finally on June 9, 1902, the meat trust gave in, and the price of meat dropped to 14 cents per pound. The kosher meat riots were an example of women beginning to exercise their political voices, as well as being a window into the future, where Jewish women grew to have a large part in labor activism throughout the 20th century. In fact, many of the daughters of the rioting women went on to be involved in union organizing in the garment industry after the events of the deadly Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire less than 10 years later.